welcome to you all to this, like the moderator rightly said, something that is very important for us to look at vis-a-vis other things that we are doing and the current situation we found ourselves. But I will create your indulgence that I will switch off my video because of the speed of my internet here. Is so low and I want to maximize the impact.
No problem, please go ahead.
Okay.
And I also implore everyone, if you can switch off your video and mute your microphone so that we can have a good session today. Thank you very much. And I will do the same.
Okay. I hope you can all see my slide.
Yes, we can.
Yes, thank you so much. We are discussing the issue of how immunity can be built through nutrition, looking at the whole larger picture on how we can prevent COVID-19 infections. I will take you through the overview and the kind of the framework for actually achieving this. But I will leave some details to my next speaker, who will look at what happens at the household level. But before I do that, for those of us who are meeting the foundation for the first time, I would like to take you through what the foundation does and how it does it. It's a foundation that is building a legacy and is trying to make a difference, and it's actually doing that. Because its vision is that of an Africa whose people are healthier, better educated, and empowered, and which is the cause of human capital development. So a shift towards Africans, helping Africans, and sometimes Africans will be helping the whole world. We have all seen what is actually playing out in the current pandemic we are faced with COVID-19, and how most of them we're waiting onto the Western world to look onto us and assist us. But in the same way, we could see the effort that is being galvanized at the local level, where we see all our philanthropists coming together to make contributions. That is our vision. That's what we would like to see happening in Nigeria and by extension in Africa at large. And our guiding philosophy is that of why we do what we do. And like I said earlier on, we believe in Africa, taking care of Africa, and we believe in Africans taking charge, a situation where Africa is open to the whole world and helping the whole world. And how do we do that? Through our ability to scale up proven solutions. There are a lot of things we do on a daily basis in the area of health, in the area of empowerment, and in the area of humanitarian relief that we want to bring innovative solutions to, and then influence people to be able to adopt those smart and relevant interventions. And then we're setting up Africa for success through all these strategies that we have. And our main strategy, like you can see on the screen, is we are focused mainly on the area of health, on the area of education, economic empowerment, and human relief. And in addition to all that we've done, I don't need to bother you with that, but you can always find out information and definitely, there's so much that we've done, but I just want to look at our effort briefly on the recent pandemic that we are faced with. We are always known in the foundation to use the voice and the leadership of our benefactor, who has agreed to mobilize homegrown corporate philanthropy and community solidarity at a very unprecedented scale. And he has done that to be able to raise a partnership with all business sectors. And that is why we see the humongous contribution that the private sector has actually brought about to support Nigeria in collaboration with the Central Bank of Nigeria, and we're talking of something at the tune of over 21 billion naira, and it's still growing every day. that they have actually contributed. But today, as of today, we have about $57 million as part of support, both in cash and kind, to the government of Nigeria. I just want to lastly say that we recognize that responsibility, of businesses' action or whatever they do is not just, it's a marathon. It's not just a sprint. It's not a dash in such a way that we're able to solve the problem and then the situation that we have found ourselves in. So that's what we do in a nutshell. Then to the issue of the day, like the moderator rightly said, coronaviruses have been causing problems all over the world for a very long time. Several versions are known, and two types are already known. I know that cause problem. They cause deadly illnesses, and they are known to trigger common colds. And more recently, those two types are severe acute respiratory syndrome, which is SARS, and the Middle East respiratory syndrome, which is MERS. But their impact has been mild compared with the global havoc unleashed by the coronavirus that is causing the COVID-19 pandemic. So it's really unique and different. And today, I just heard from the news that there is a new study that has been that has already been carried out, although not really published, that shows that the variant gets mutated and changed from time to time, and they've always been doing that, and it has been mutating and keep on changing. So what we have in Nigeria may not necessarily be what was found originally in China. So we need to look at that. And then more so, it has caused a lot of humanity, a sort of more challenges. Like it has triggered lockdowns in dozens of nations, including Nigeria. Many lives, over 250,000 lives are lost. And in the process, we have over 3 million really cases that are confirmed globally. And that's really an issue for us to look at. And yes, we know vaccines and all the rest will have to be done. So we have all this knowledge concerning COVID-19. But the challenge with us is, or the question before us is that, what have we learned over the past 5 months? And how might that knowledge put an end to this pandemic? I think we have to begin to think internally and then get some things in our messages across to people of Nigeria and people of Africa and all over the world that people need to consider, even though we are doing those things from time to time. But at the same vein, we need to create that sense of urgency in what we are doing. Yes, the virus is spreading very fast. And if you look at map of Nigeria, it's like almost everywhere except 2 states now. And we're talking of this yesterday, as of yesterday, we have about 2,950. So it's like on daily basis, it's increasing. There's no doubt about that. And then another thing that we need to take care of is that the virus will be with us for some time. Everybody could change its virulence, we don't know, but some researchers have suggested that they could become less deadly and then wipe out. We don't know what will happen, but as long as it's still living with us, we have to do so many things. And now, like the measure government is taking by kind of reopening or kind of leasing down the issue of the lockdown, then it means your safety is now 100% your responsibility. So everything is in your hand and it's in everyone's hand. While we practice social distancing, hand washing, wearing masks, less travel across borders, other parts, remain where you are, do your work the way you can, and when you are ill, stay at home. All those things are very, very important. But again, I like us to really look at the issue of nutrition, food and nutrition, how they can really play out. because it is part of your responsibility too, to feed yourself. It's your responsibility to take care of yourself, and it's your responsibility to take care of others, especially the most vulnerable ones. So you are what you eat, we used to say, and this is actually the core and the focus of my presentation. Yes, there is a good news, and the good news is that it's not a death sentence. The good news is that we have fatality rate that is still low, although one death is too many. But if you look at it, some people have recovered as well. But what we know is that the major cure of the virus is your immune system. So many scientists have correctly called that boosting our immune system that is the #1 defense mechanism against COVID-19. So they've said that. And then the immune system will need to adapt unaided to COVID-19. So as COVID-19 is adapting, that virus as it's adapting, our immune system needs to adapt. And because a healthy lifestyle helps one's immune system to be in the best shape possible to tackle the pathogens. But it's better to stop them entering the body in the first instance. So we have to stop it, not that you allow it to come in. And then the coronavirus itself, the pandemic has turned the whole world's attention to the immune system. So the body's defense force against disease-causing bacteria and other organisms that we touch, ingest, and inhale every day. So we have to take cognizance of this. Now, how can food actually play the role of helping, contributing towards flattening the curve? We have been hearing the word flattening the curve in the true sense of the fact that how do we reduce the number of cases we'll be having within the community? Yes, we know we've had a lot of other interventions like social distancing, as I mentioned earlier on, like your washing of your hands, don't touch your eyes, your face, or nose. Wear your mask wherever you go when you are outside. All this will help, but they will not totally protect you. They will protect you against the infection, but they won't build your immunity, and they won't protect you against illness and infection and support your recovery. But what we do that mainly is the nutrients that you take, and that will boost your immunity, and that's known in the literature that we need that. And we know too well that malnourished individuals have a very higher risk of becoming ill, a longer duration of illness, and a greater risk of death. So we have found out too that the risk of severe COVID-19 illness and death are highest among those who have conditions that are related to cardiovascular diseases and diabetes. We know all this, and I don't want to take you to those details. However, I just like us to see too, because so that by the time I start mentioning those technical jargons, then you can really relate with me how nutrient is relating with all this. But again, when you look at the overall immune system, you know that our immune system is constantly working to protect the body from infection, from injury, and from diseases. And the immune system on its own consists of various organs. It's not just located in one part of the body, but various organs that you can see from your tonsils, lymph nodes, even to the bone marrow. So they are found there, but they are found in the form of the white blood cells. And these white blood cells, which are the cells of the immune system, they are made inside the bone marrow, and they travel through the body inside lymph vessels, which are in close contact with the bloodstream. And there are several types of these white blood cells. One of them is neutrophils, and what they do, the neutrophils engulf and destroy. The monocytes and macrophages engulf and destroy as well. Eosinophils, they fight parasitic infections. Basophils, they release histamine, and then lymphocytes themselves attack specific pathogens. And then the plasma cells produce antibodies. You will have heard of people talking of plasma cells, and how they use these plasma cells to develop a kind of vaccine. These are things that are for those who are in the field. But again, just for your information. And then the next slide, try to look at what immune system provides. It provides 3 levels of defense against disease-causing organisms. We need to understand that. And these 3 levels are the barriers, the innate immunity, and then the acquired or adaptive immunity, for those of us who are familiar with immunology. But I don't want to take you into details, but just to note that the barriers, that's where the immune system prevent entry through your skin or kind of mucous membranes, through stomach acid and digestive enzymes, and then the beneficial bacteria that live in the colon that we refer to as gut microbiotas. And then the innate immunity, because when any infection, any virus or organism passes through the barriers, the skin, the mucus, passes through acid and the rest, then they are faced with the general defense created by innate immunity, which we refer to as natural immunity. So the white blood cell cause the neutrophils, as I said earlier on, and macrophages, and engulf and destroy foreign invaders, just like a kind of military tactics. That's how our body really reacts to infection, any foreign thing entering our body. Then the last one is that when the natural immunity fails, when the general defense is not there, then it becomes specific defense through the acquired or innate. Acquired in the sense that it's not there naturally, can use vaccine or some other things to create the antibodies. And the white blood cells, there are 2 types, the T cells and the B cells. We call them or T lymphocytes or T cells, and B lymphocytes or B cells. So they are found in different places and carry out different functions. And the T cells target and destroy infected and cancerous cells, while the B cells, which are plasma cells, produce antibodies, as I said earlier on, that target and destroy infected or cancerous cells. That's what they do. And that's what those in the field of vaccine are working on, to look at how they can create that immune system to help the body. We need these features of immune response. There are 3 key features of immune response to be able to target and then bring about, and where nutrition will play that key role. The first one is the inflammation. Inflammation, in the sense that it's a central feature of a normal immune response. It serves to facilitate the delivery of immune cells. It produces chemical messengers and antibodies to a site of injury or infection, like the COVID-19. That's how our body will react to it. However, inappropriate activation of inflammation or the inability to turn off inflammation can lead to tissue damage and the development of chronic disease that we've seen. And that's how COVID-19 reacts to in our lungs when it gets to the lower part of the lung. But those important nutrients that we know they are very critical and they are useful, the EPA, we call them, and DHA, they are because they have anti-inflammatory activity that can help keep inflammation in check. You know, that's what they do. And then the next one is the respiratory oxidative burst. These phagocytes are a type of immune cell that engulf and destroy invading organisms. So to help destroy invaders, certain phagocytes called neutrophils produce a concentrated burst of reactive oxygen species, ROS we call it, and damaging the substances that help kill invading organisms, as is the case with inflammation. So the respiratory burst is part of the normal immune response, but prolonged and continuous exposure to ROS, which is the reactive oxygen species, can be damaging to tissues as well and contribute to chronic disease. But the following are the vitamins or the nutrients that are required for that particular purpose to be able to protect the immune cells and keep the oxidative burst in check. So you need vitamin C. That's why you have had some people saying they are taking vitamin C. You need vitamin E, you need iron, you need zinc, you need copper, you need selenium. These are very, very important, you know, in that regard. Let me say too here, I can see some people raising their hands. I think the moderator is saying after the presentation, then we can receive comments and questions. So please, let's hold on to them. Then the next slide is the 12 types of the key features of immune response. We call it proliferation. The word proliferation means you increase in the number or amount of something. So the immune system is constantly producing cells, is constantly producing chemical messengers, like I said earlier on, and proteins to carry out its function. That's what those in immunology or those who are investing are trying to understudy from this kind of a virus, and then make sure that they get the vaccines out. And when it encounters a foreign invader, this same immune system will ramp up production to respond accordingly. So this process we call proliferation requires energy, it requires building blocks and cofactors to produce the many cells and substances to mount an effective immune response. And the typical important nutrients that are required are vitamin A or beta-carotene source, vitamin D, folate or folic acid, vitamin B12, vitamin B6, iron, and zinc, which are responsible for the production and development of all new cells in the body, including immune cells. Now, these are kind of micronutrients, but people don't eat micronutrients. So that's why I would like to spend a few seconds to take us through some of the sources, food sources of this nutrient, because that's very, very important for us. We take note of this. Yes, that rather than looking for your vitamin C, then you know what good source of vitamin C in our foods and in our locality. So the EPA and DHA, they are responsible, they are found rather in herring, in salmon, and then in sardines, in fish mainly. And then the vitamin A, you can find vitamin in egg you consume every day. I've seen on the social media something going around that's what they feed them in the isolation centers, that they give them egg, they give them vitamin C tablets, you know. But you can take your vitamin C from orange as you're taking them and continue to take more of them on daily basis. And in the same vein, you have vitamin D, which is found in pink salmon, in sardines, in fortified milk, you know. Even the sunshine, I've seen where they say they ask them to stay in the sun. I saw it on the social media that people were asked to stay in the sun for 10 to 11 hours. But it's to get the sun, and that's why we need all those things too, you know, concerning what we do. If you look at vitamin E, vitamin E can be found in almonds, in sunflower oil. We all take vegetable oil that are produced from sunflower. We have avocado. All these are good sources of vitamin E. The same thing with folic acid. If you can't get the tablets or supplement, you can find them in lentils, in spinach or amaranthus vegetable, in fortified bread. Breads that are flour in Nigeria is being fortified with folic acid currently, iron and folic acid. The same thing with vitamin B12. They can be found in those, in beef mainly that we consume, and some other things like clams and mackerel, fish. Then vitamin B6 in potato with skin, because we have to eat the potato and then just peel off the skin. And that's why even in some tubers, rather than peeling off before you boil and then you peel off after you boil, so that you can retain some of those nutrients. They are very, very important. I just try to provide for you what the recommended daily allowance are based on the United States, based on a typical American diet. So that's where you can find that from. Then the same thing with zinc, which can be found in oysters, in beef, and yogurt. To those of us who take all these. So they are very, very important. Then iron in beef as well, tuna, lentils, and a host of other sources. The same thing with copper, very important. Like I mentioned earlier on, they can be found in oysters, they can be found in cashew nuts, those of us who take cashew nuts, and lentils. Then the selenium, most often you hear people attaching so much importance to selenium. Like I said earlier on, it's one of those that are required for the production of cells in the body, replacement of cells, because the virus will cause cell damage and then cell differentiation, and then you need to replace them. So they can be found in tuna, in pork, and then whole wheat bread. Now, having said all this, when you look at those nutrients, if anyone should lack those nutrients and don't have access, if anyone doesn't have access to those nutrients, then to those foods that I've just mentioned, I mean, you need to combine those foods with your staples anyway. So if you don't have access to this in your meal, and then it can lead to malnutrition, because malnutrition will always increase susceptibility to infections, while infections will aggravate malnutrition by decreasing appetite, inducing catabolism, and increasing demand for nutrients. So there is high demand for nutrients. And if you are not feeding in those nutrients that I have mentioned, then there's going to be a problem to be able to fight the infection. And if you can't fight infection, that's why some are dying, because of those underlying. Underlying meaning that even for those micronutrients, we say they've lacked them. So the tendency to be able to regenerate cells while they are being broken down by the virus will not be there any longer. And that's why we need that. And that's why, again, you can't divulge malnutrition from poverty. Many people are poor, they don't have access to good health care, social support is not there. And that's why the whole COVID-19 response by the country has to be more multi-sectoral, not just one sector handling it. It's not a health issue alone, it's even a poverty issue. We have not seen cases where we have not been able to classify the cases along socioeconomic yet. But by the time we get there, you realize that we will see more poor people even dying from that, even before they are infected. So that's why I try to give us this, that this is what will happen if we don't have access to those nutrients that I've mentioned and those foods, if they are not complementing our meals. And like I said, we have to keep going, whatever we are doing. Currently in Nigeria, we have a lot of programs going on. You know, apart from getting those things for yourself, this is where government, this is where individuals have to consider that what am I giving, what am I feeding someone who is having a challenge at this time. Either they have the case or no case. If they are not infected or infected, everybody needs good nutrition. And we have to keep going, because if you look at the causes of malnutrition, there are about three levels of the causes. And for those causes, we have put together a kind of interventions that are categorized into those that are nutrition specific, because they address the immediate causes of inadequate dietary intake. Because if you don't have those micronutrients, it will lead to malnutrition and it can affect the disease. So the same vein is that we have those things too that can help to prevent diseases. My colleague will look at those, especially at the household level, that we should be doing, that are very, very essential for us to take note of. He will really expatiate on that further. But again, the issue of management of acute malnutrition. Many children now are severely and acutely malnourished. And I don't want to bother you with those pictures right now, but the pictures are out there that they are really malnourished. And then we have to take care of them. those ones may not be able to survive the coronavirus if they are infected. Same thing with those who are even overnourished, who are having high weight and then they are not taking those micronutrients. If they are infected, they may have a challenge. So we have to keep managing this acute malnutrition in our community. We have to promote what we call infant and young child feeding. That is where breastfeeding should be practiced. You know, we have breastfeeding even when the child is born, and then up to 6 months without water. The same thing with when you are now adding other food to that to the breastfeeding, you complement. Those complementary foods need to be enriched with those micronutrients that I've mentioned earlier on. And those micronutrients, we have programs that are ongoing that make provision for them. We supplement children mainly. But again, for adults, then you can have access to them in shops and in various hospitals or pharmaceutical shops, you know, in that regard. But these are what we call nutrition-specific interventions, which are carried out by the health systems or in the health facilities or by the health sector. But again, there are some other nutrition interventions that basically will address the underlying causes. If you don't do all of them holistically and multisectorally, and at the same time, the kind of coherence, then we won't reduce malnutrition in the forms in which they are. So we need to do all together and then be able to carry out that. And that's food production mainly. We diversify our food, where you have those vegetables and other meals that I've mentioned being diversified in our food to be able to reduce malnutrition at all levels and at all sectors. Then the issue of safe water, you know, water and sanitation, we have been asked to wash hands. We have to indicate, we have to maintain pressure too on what we drink. It's not just washing hands. We saw a video, viral video, where someone washed his hand and used that same water, although it's trying to tempt the issue of how he can resist coronavirus on his own. That's why he showed that. And then the issue of food fortification is very, very important. We need to continue, and they are doing that. The industries are fortifying the food with some of those micronutrients you have seen, if not all. So they're doing that. And then as well as cash transfer, because I mentioned poverty. Poverty along the line will make many people not having access to those micronutrients. Because whenever you ask them, take vegetables, take this, take that, they always tell you they don't have the resources to do that. And a host of other actions that should be ongoing. And they are already being implemented on the field. They need to continue with that. And then finally, I want us to look at beyond COVID-19. What should we be doing? We actually need an adaptive policy approach to strengthen our health systems preparedness and response in Nigeria. And how do we do that? How do we take all these, I've mentioned those interventions to be ongoing at the same time? At the health system, at the market system, and then the food system. They all need to come together. And that's why I share with you what Aliko Dangote Foundation is doing concerning the Aliko Dangote Foundation Integrated Nutrition Program, which I'm sharing with you. I don't know if you are still seeing my presentation. Okay.
No, we can't see your presentation.
I don't know what happened to it. Anyway, sorry, just allow me to, okay, get it back. Sorry, so like I was saying, yeah, I think that's where I was. Like I was saying, we need all these at the same time taking place in all our health facilities, in all our food systems, in all our market systems. They need to be there, and that's how we can help others to get what we are having. Because if you package this together, then we'll be able to do that. And I'm giving an indication of what Aliko Dangote Foundation is doing, you know, where we are investing in a kind of some tools, innovative tools, and we are building sustainable healthcare through revitalization of primary healthcare for integrated management of acute malnutrition, where you couple that with the integrated nutrition-specific and nutrition-sensitive intervention. So we put all this together to have what we call ADFIN. And in ADFIN, we treat children with severe acute malnutrition using the integrated management of acute malnutrition. We reach households of children, these children with SAM and their communities that contribute the most to the burden of the SAM burden, food security with cash-based interventions and livelihood. So we reach these same households with engendered optimal nutrition, hygiene and care-seeking behavior that we call social and behavior change interventions. And then with advocacy through nutrition leadership and governance, we're able to reach that. And then we keep on monitoring our program. So in a nutshell, that's how we are envisaging the next generator for us to, otherwise we just be addressing issues in bits and in parts and in parallel. And then that will not really help us. So in conclusion, I just want us to realize the fact that there's no one solution that will be enough to handle this. The issue of hand washing, we need to combine the general public health strategies we have already, like hand washing, physical distancing, staying at home, quarantine, and national testing programs that are available to anyone who needs it. It needs to be in place, together with effective medical care and drug treatments for those who fall ill. But that won't be enough, like I said earlier on. We cannot fully contain COVID-19 at this point, so we must face it head on and bring every tool that we have to bear against it. From support for the hungry, we have to do that, to better nutrition, to scientific endeavor that are seeking in kind of drug treatments and vaccines. And we must be prepared to do this for years to come. So food and nutrition are key elements that can't be neglected in this regard. So aiming to eat healthier, to boost the immune system, addressing urgent new food insecurity with a comprehensive national plan and building a robust national strategy to shift the food system to address cardiovascular disease and diabetes. Many of us are staying at home now and eating and do less exercise. The implication is still there. And then all these are complementary to actions that we need. Like I said earlier on, your safety is now 100% your responsibility. The NCDC, federal government, the presidential task force, you put a lot of measures in place, instructions in place. Let's follow all these instructions so that we take responsibility for whatever happens to us. I want to thank you for this opportunity, and I want to thank Youth Empowerment Foundation, the OBF, and I want to thank my CEO who has agreed that this presentation be made at this point in time and with you all. And then we look forward to your comments and to your questions. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Aminu. It has been an in-depth presentation. We're glad to hear from you. And you have indeed touched on nutrients for children and adults in order to be able to combat the COVID-19. Yes, indeed, the virus is fast spreading and everybody's safety now lies there in their hands. It is everybody's responsibility because according to you, the virus will be with us for some time to come. Yeah. From your presentation, yeah, I could take some salient points that yes, indeed, there's good news. The major cure is our immune system and it is the #1 cure. So, but we need to have some nutrients to build immunity, and that will include higher intake of specific nutrients to boost our immunity. And we need to have vitamin E, folate, vitamin B12, vitamin B6 for people 19-year-old to 50 years old. You also talked about nutrients, zinc, where we can have oysters, beef, and yogurt. Talked about iron, where we have beef and tuna, copper, where we can get pork, cashew nuts, selenium, where we have tuna, pork, and whole white meat. Thank you, Dr. Aminu. Yeah, according to you also, without these nutrients, and as we all know, it will lead to malnutrition. But there's indeed more that we need to do. Food and nutrition are key elements to boost the health system, but we need a national plan and strategy in order to address this pandemic. So thank you very much, Dr. Aminu. We have some questions for you, but before we take your questions, we would like to have the second speaker, and after that, we have the questions coming and the comments. I hope this is okay with you, Dr. Aminu. Dr. Aminu. Hello, Dr. Aminu, can you hear me, please? Dr. Aminu, can you hear me? Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Aminu. We'll come back to you. But we will go straight now to our second speaker, Mrs. Iwalola Akin-Jimoh. Mrs. Iwalola Akin-Jimoh is the Executive Secretary of the Youth Empowerment Foundation, and she's also on the board of 3 CSOs in Nigeria, including the Ovie Brume Foundation, the host of today's webinar, and Development Communications DevComs and Positive Action for Treatment Access. Mrs. Akin-Jimoh has first and second degrees in human nutrition from University of Ibadan, and she's a field-based nutritionist for over 3 decades now, practicing community level and consulting for selected private hospitals. She's a fitness and wellness consultant and director at Fitness Connections Gym and a martial arts, specifically for Taekwondo and Judo. I can tell you actually that Mrs. Iwalola is very passionate about Taekwondo and Judo. She had her executive leadership training at Wharton Business School, University of Pennsylvania. She's a Vital Voices Fellow and Choice USA Fellow. She's also a mother and a wife. For this webinar, for the purpose of this webinar, Mrs. Akin-Jimoh's session will dwell more specifically on what we need to do at the household level to strengthen immunity and promote positive nutrition, and how to specifically use nutrition to treat mild symptoms of COVID-19. Well, if time permits us, Mrs. Akin-Jimoh will also give us some tips on how frontline workers are protecting themselves globally. Mrs. Akin-Jimoh, you're most welcome to this webinar. You have the floor. Thank you very much. I would like to implore everyone again, if you can, mute your microphones and switch off your videos so that we can have a smooth conversation. Thank you very much. Mrs. Akin-Jimoh, you have 30 minutes to speak to us, and then we can go into questions and answer session. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Adeola, for the introduction. I want to also appreciate Dr. Aminu for an excellent session. He has made my job much easier this afternoon. I've tried to put up my screen. I hope you can all see my screen. We're going to be talking specifically about how we can build immunity at the household level. Now, my session is just in about 7 parts. And the first thing I'll talk about are key research findings that we've seen over the last 2 to 3 months. Then I'll talk specifically about the benefits of trying to address COVID-19 at the household level. Then I'll move into age-specific needs that we need to start talking about, that Dr. Aminu has also talked about a little bit. If we have time, we'll look at what is happening at the isolation centers. And I will now give some few tips about how frontline workers are trying to build their immunity in their day-to-day work. Now, some key research findings, which Dr. Aminu has also dwelled on. And the first one I want to emphasize is the fact that there have been a lot of research work on pregnant women, and it's been shown that the virus is not passed from the mother to the fetus at this point in time, as we speak now, and nor is it present in vaginal secretion. Now, also the virus has not been found in breast milk of infected mothers, making breastfeeding a safe way of giving infants the first start in life. Now, what research has also shown is that the benefits of breastfeeding an infant far outweighs issues around social and physical distancing. So if you feel that because a mother has a child, then you should keep the child away. What research has shown is that it's better to have the child very close to the mother, and at the same time, the mother is breastfeeding such an infant. Now, in terms of nutrition or dietary management of COVID-19, it is key for us to know that existing physiological conditions and progress will determine the nutrition and dietary management of COVID-19. And I want to also state categorically that there's no food or dietary supplement that can prevent COVID-19 infection. And Dr. Aminu did also emphasize this. So we need to observe all the necessary precautions that will ensure that we're not exposed to the virus. And if indeed we are, what are the things we can do to improve our immunity? Now, straight to the point of why should we adopt an household approach? Now, the background for a strong immune system is established very early in life, and that means it happens in the home. And one of the things we need to understand is that despite lockdowns and financial constraints, we can still have a healthy diet based on what we have available at the community level. Now, we also need to understand that many a times COVID-19 is taken home and even sometimes contracted in the home, especially for the elderly people. If some of us have been on the social media, we would have seen the fact that some elderly people have actually gotten the infection in the homes. And so if we can sanitize and control the home front, what we're saying is reduce the risk of COVID-19, then to a very large extent we'll be doing excellent work. Now, food hygiene is also easily controlled at the household level, and it is important for us to note that it's been recommended that eating out is not appropriate at this time for several reasons. You can't control the cooking practices, you can't control the types of oil, you're not very sure of the level of hygiene when the food was being made. And also, finally, good habits are established at home and they're also established very early in life. And so it's important for us to adopt this approach, the household approach. Now, looking at pregnancy specifically and COVID-19, based on what I had said initially, is the fact that research has shown that pregnant women don't necessarily pass on the virus to the fetus. But there's a recent research that was released about a couple of days ago by the British Medical Journal that actually emphasizes the fact that pregnant frontline workers should stay back at home, particularly if they're over 28 weeks pregnant. And the main reason for this is because pregnancy itself has effect on the immune system, the cardiovascular system, and the respiratory system. And we know that COVID-19 also impacts the immune system, the cardiovascular system, particularly in people who have existing conditions, and also the respiratory system. So it's being advised, and stated that frontline workers in particular who are pregnant should please not be part of, the response to COVID-19. Now, Dr. Aminu did also emphasize the fact that, pregnant women, it's important for them to adhere to their antenatal sessions. If you need to have antenatal sessions, please, those sessions should still go on as much as possible, and they are to also use their iron, folic, and acid supplements on a regular basis. What we do know, now talking specifically about Nigeria, is that NCDC also has a guideline, which provide details of what happens to pregnant women and also in isolation centers. Now, one of the things we need to note is that there's a need for nutrition-specific interventions for pregnant women in isolation centers. And this is very key and important. Outside of the country, we've heard of how pregnant women, have delivered even in a state of coma. And at the end of the day, both mother and child, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of stories like this in Nigeria. But the truth of the matter is NCDC does have guidelines. But if those guidelines have been adhered to in isolation centers is another question that we need to ask ourselves. Now, going into breastfeeding and COVID, having talked about pregnant women, I want us to understand some few basic things, which is a guideline that is provided by WHO, specifically called the decision tree, which talks about breastfeeding in the context of COVID-19. Just to go over this model decision tree very quickly. Now, if a mother is suspected to have COVID-19, I mean, what we're saying is you're suspecting, and then you confirm that the person doesn't have, then the person, you support such a mother, to breastfeed. If on the other hand, the mother has COVID-19, but is well enough to breastfeed, then you support the mother to observe safety precautions like wearing a medical mask, and if the medical mask is not available, at least having a mask to protect the baby from coming in contact with her droplets. And one of the things that has to be done is before breastfeeding, she needs to observe washing of hands and making sure our clothes are in hygienic condition so that she doesn't have direct, the baby doesn't come in contact with the droplets from the mother. Now, if on the other hand, the mother is not well enough to breastfeed, which might be in situations where probably she has delivered by cesarean section, then you can support the mother if the mother is able to express breast milk, and the breast milk is fed to the baby. If on the other hand, the mother is not able to express breast milk, then the next thing, which if culturally acceptable, is if a mother is around to breastfeed, a donor, if a mother there's a wet nurse available, or otherwise, if there's a bank, milk bank, which is something that is not really practiced in Nigeria. So you go ahead and ensure, but I think in the Nigerian situation is a case of extraction of milk, and then you feed to the baby and continue breastfeeding when the mother is ready. It's important for us to understand this and know that breastfeeding is not a source of COVID-19. And it's important for the mother to observe, if the mother has been confirmed to have COVID-19, then the mother has to observe all safety precautions, washing of hands before nursing the child, and also ensuring that she wears mask if the mask is available, and if the mask is not available, ensure that she keeps her droplets through, it could be homemade mask, to ensure that the baby is protected during the breastfeeding. Now, if on the other hand, the woman is not able to breastfeed, there's no expressed milk, then there has to be alternative ways of feeding the baby using infant formula. But one of the things we know in our country is that infant formula is quite expensive, and there's a need to observe a lot of hygiene conditions in terms of the process of preparing the milk, the water that is used, the cup that is used, the spoon that is used. All these have to be properly taken care of so that there's no infection to the baby. Now, having talked about pregnant women and breastfeeding, we now move on to how best can we deliver nutritious foods to people outside of those two brackets, which are children under 5 and women. Now, what we know is that there's an essential nutrition action document that is put together by WHO, which guides what we need to do, not only at the household level, but also at the community level. And the reference is right there under the slide for people who would want to look at this document on a larger scale. And so the first point is women's nutrition, and this includes adolescents and women during pregnancy and lactation, which we talked about a bit. And what we're saying is not only do women need nutritious food, but adolescents too, whether male or female, are also supposed to be well catered for and given nutritious foods. Now, what the initial slide talked about is breastfeeding. Now, breastfeeding for the first 6 months of life, it's key and very important. And the early initiation to breastfeeding, it also should be immediately after that, an exclusive breastfeeding for the first 6 months. Very, very important. And infant feeding in the context of if there is an existing infection, whether it is HIV or COVID-19, infant feeding practices are very important and key. Complementary feeding from 6 months, this has also been discussed a bit by Dr. Aminu in terms of what is fed to the child when the baby, at the stop of, when you introduce complementary feeding, and in terms of appropriate quality, the frequency of feeding, and the diversity. What we're saying is when you start giving complementary food, it should be age appropriate, not only age appropriate, it should be of quality to sustain the growth of the infant. It should be diversified as much as possible, and in a way that the baby is getting enough vitamins, enough minerals, enough energy, enough protein to support the growth of the child. And at this point, it's important to do extensive growth monitoring, because when you have a child and you're just feeding in the house and you don't know what the child is striving, it's not okay. So growth monitoring at this point is very, very important. And fried foods, whether commercial or own, it's very, very important. Now, Dr. Aminu did also dwell about this in terms of food fortification. There are several infant formulas that have been fortified. There are several infant cereals that have been fortified, but at the same time, it's key to have home-based diets that are affordable, like having mixed cereals prepared in the form of fermented cereals that you can introduce to the child. Now, nutrition care of sick and malnourished children, it's very important. As we stand, we would rather not go into the statistics of how many children or infants are malnourished. But what we're saying is, when a child is born and the child has low birth weight, the treatment of making sure that the baby and the mother are together, it's very, very important, for not only for bonding, but to facilitate the growth of the infant. Now, provision of vitamin A is very important, and it's something that it's compulsory for infants, and treatment of diarrhea as soon as in terms of introduction of oral rehydration solutions, use of zinc supplements, integration of all the aspects of community-based management of acute malnutrition, and treatment of moderate and severe malnutrition. It's very important. The WASH component that is of utmost importance is promotion of safe drinking water, and so it's not just about hand washing. It's also about the consumption of water that is not going to predispose the family, the entire household, to diarrhea. And hand washing at 5 critical stages, and I've outlined this: after defecation, after cleaning the child who has defecated, before food preparation, you're supposed to wash your hand, before feeding the child, you need to wash your hand, and even before you eat yourself, you're supposed to wash your hand. Safe disposal of feces is a problem in our country, and this is something we want to emphasize. Safe storage and handling of food, very critical in terms of covering cooked food and even uncooked food, keeping it in a safe way, free from vermin, free from infection, and free from, very poor storage is very key. Now, it's important for us to promote and, as much as possible, encourage communities that are free from open defecation. This is a huge problem. And we know the problems that can arise from open defecation. Several diseases have been linked to open defecation. Now, creating barriers between toddlers that are just learning how to drive, and soil surfaces and soil animal feces is key. These are essential hygiene actions that have been stipulated by WHO that needs to be followed. Prevention and control of anemia among women and children is very key. Control of anemia needs to start very early in life, as soon as a young girl starts, even before the young girl reaches the age of menarche, is supposed to be on iron supplements. And we're saying categorically, like I said before, that it's not just about the girl child, but also the male child. Iron is very, very important. Prevention and control of vitamin A deficiency through breastfeeding and high dose supplementation, very key. And then prevention of control of iron deficiency is very important. So those of us that are consuming salt that are not iodized, we're not doing ourselves any good at all. I want to summarize some general tips for healthy diet at the household level. And based on some of the work we've done at the grassroots level, eating a varied diet within and across all food groups, from carbohydrates to, healthy fats to proteins, is very important. Eat a lot of fruits and vegetables for vitamins and minerals and fiber. And we know during the lockdown, we had to limit our trips to the market. Now we still need to limit our trips to the market because the market is not a place where you can necessarily maintain social distancing. You can think if you can afford to buy canned or frozen options, but of fruits and vegetables. But what we're saying in effect is that if you have the resources to buy, ensure that, I mean, for a purpose, if you don't really want to be going to the market, that's what it is, which is not recommended at this time because of the fact that social distancing and physical distancing cannot really be maintained in the market. Please buy canned and frozen options that are not preserved in sugar, salt, or preservatives. Consume whole grains, nuts, and healthy fats from olive oil, from groundnut. And as much as possible, realize the fact that unsaturated fats support the immune system and limit inflammation, which is one of the things COVID-19 does to the body. Watch your intake of fat, sugar, and salt. I've mentioned this. Continue to practice good food hygiene in several ways. You keep your raw foods apart from the cooked ones. You cook food thoroughly. Keep foods at safe temperature. So if a food is a particular food stuff is meant to be frozen, let it be frozen. If it's meant to be at room temperature, let it be at room temperature, and so on and so forth. Use safe water and use safe raw materials. Now, we cannot, emphasize too much the issue of hydration. By the time you're feeling thirsty and you're drinking, you're already dehydrated. You're supposed to drink water regularly, and we're not talking of sweetened drinks, because what we want is a situation where the calorie intake can be checked. Limit consumption of alcohol. This has been emphasized and discussed over and over again. We've seen it on the social media. Observe tips for healthy lifestyle, and this includes not smoking, exercising on a regular basis, getting adequate sleep, reducing or managing your stress, because at this point in time, everybody's already under some level of stress in terms of anxiety about the virus. So now I want to go straight into specific tips for nutrition management of mild symptoms. And when I say mild symptoms, we're talking of mild symptoms of COVID-19 specifically. And I want to emphasize that this is runny nose, fever, cough, headache, and sore throat. And so one of the key points is to ensure you take adequate intake of fluids, which is 2 liters at least. But if there's an existing fever, then the quantity of fluids to be taken has to go up a bit. And this is going to be based on the weight of the individual. Now, what we need to note is that fever increases the need for more calories, and thus the need to increase more nutritious, energy-rich foods, and specifically foods that are rich in nutrients include legumes, fruits, vegetables, meats, and milk. We've talked about supplementation of vitamin C in the previous presentation, supplementation of zinc for the important role they play in ensuring that the immune system functions at optimal capacity. Vitamin A, vitamin D and E, iron, folate, and fiber in case the person is not getting enough are key nutrients that are important in the management of mild symptoms of COVID-19. Ensure enough sleep, reduce stress, or the way you look at the stress, exercise, avoid intake of alcohol and tobacco is also coming up here. Now, in situations where there are coughs, one of the ways by which this can be relieved is the use of honey, use of pineapple and chicken soups, and also gargling when there are coughs. Salt rose can be relieved by taking several teas, and some examples are there: honey, ginger, turmeric, sage, and a lot of these have been discussed also extensively. Use of culinary herbs helps to increase antioxidant levels in the body, and those are some examples of herbs where you can get antioxidants: oregano, sage, cinnamon, and also green leafy vegetables. It's important to limit the intake of refined carbohydrates. And the main reason for this is because they're sources of trans fats, and trans fats are not good for anybody. And this includes sugar, sweets, cakes, and pastries. As much as possible, reduce it to the barest minimum, and limit intake of foods containing fats, particularly fats from meats, fats from skin of chicken, skin of turkey, and so on and so forth. Fluid intake should be based on weight, and I've given examples. If you weigh between 40 to 60, you need to take about 2 liters of water, 60 to 80, about 2.5 liters. Above 80 kg, you need to take about 3 liters of water. And we're saying plain water here. We're not talking about soft drinks, sweetened drinks, and we're talking about plain water as much as possible. But there's a note of caution in the case of people who are elderly or have reduced cardiac or renal functions. Please note that they don't consume as much water as people who don't have these pre-existing conditions. Okay, now let's talk about when there is some level of pulmonary disease. As mentioned in the previous presentation, and also we see that to a very large extent, some of us are managing cases of COVID-19 in our homes, and for several reasons. In some countries, they'll ask you to call probably 911 when you start having a problem with your breathing. But before you get to that stage, there's certain other things that happen. For example, people lose their appetite and so on and so forth. So we want to talk a bit about what are the tips for nutrition tips, particularly in cases of pulmonary disease. Now, when you have early satiety, then you eat more frequent meals, but ensure that the meals are nutrient dense. And what we mean by that is that whatever meals you're eating has adequate protein, has some level of carbohydrates, has enough micronutrients, so that you're able to maximize the amount of nutrients that you're getting from those small meals that you're eating. Now, in situations where you have anorexia, it's important for people who have anorexia, which is to eat the things they prefer to eat. But then the things you prefer to eat should not be things that will compromise your health, but rather stick to nutritious snacks and meals, and also increase the use of supplements, particularly vitamins and minerals and micronutrients, so that at least from the little that you're eating, you can get almost everything you need. Now, when there's shortness of breath, which is something a lot of people experience at some point in time during the course of the progression of the disease, what we're saying is eat diets with fewer carbohydrates, but then with good quantity of proteins in such a way that good sources and good quantity of protein, so that from the little bit that you're eating, you're getting enough protein to sustain not only your cardiovascular function, but also the need for your immune system. And so we know from some of the things we've also seen is that, for example, a lot of eggs are found in the isolation centers. And so it's important to stick to good sources of protein like eggs, lean meat, avoid overfeeding, because the person is already having shortness of breath. So you don't want at that time to load the person with a lot of food. In the situation of fatigue, it's important to include a source of protein at every meal, and so that you can sustain the use of your energy, and also make use of the little carbohydrates you have to be able to meet your energy needs. So there has to be protein at every meal. You have to limit the quantity of sugar and sugar that you're consuming and sugary foods at the same time. when there's abnormal production of sputum, which is also one of the pulmonary symptoms that come up, it's key to increase intake of fruits and vegetables. Not only intake of fruits and vegetables, but also intake of warm drinks and clear soups. When we say clear soups, we're talking of soups that don't have milk, that don't have dairy, that don't have cream, and avoid foods as much as possible that cause allergies. There's several foods that that cause allergies for different people. I mean, some people react to soybean, and some people react to shellfish, some people react to shrimps, crayfish, and all that. So avoid those foods, and also avoid foods that contain the amino acid histamine. And amino acid histamine is in processed meats like bacon, sausages, and avoid other things like vinegar, avocados, tomatoes, spinach, smoked fish, sardines, and yogurt. These are foods that contain histamine, which is known to cause allergies. Finally, well, some tips for frontline workers and carers. Apart from the safety precautions that frontline workers and carers have been given based on their different countries. For example, in Nigeria, we have the NCDC guidelines on what frontline workers and carers should do, and also is also available on WHO. We want to recommend that for frontline workers and carers, taking what you call superfoods is of utmost importance. And when I say superfoods, I'm talking specifically about citruses, oranges, and grapefruits. Why? Because they contain hesperidin, which inhibits the successful division of the virus. So if the virus is not able to multiply, then you definitely can prevent, the progression of the virus. That is, even if you have come in contact with the virus. Then dark grapes and berries are very rich in prostaglandins and lectins, which block the attachment of the virus to the lungs. Green peppers, broccoli, carrots, mints, rosemary, they also do the issue of blocking the attachment of the virus to the lungs. Dairy products are very important because of the immune role of vitamin D. Legumes, seeds, nuts are natural sources of zinc, and we know from the previous presentation and earlier slides, zinc is of utmost importance in proper immune function. Antioxidant role of catechin, which is found in green tea and chamomile, is also very important for frontline workers to use. And finally, sardines and mackerels, which are contain a lot of omega-3 fatty acids and vitamin D, are of utmost importance and superfoods that frontline workers and carers can consume. On this note, I want to talk very briefly about what Youth Empowerment Foundation is doing, particularly at the community level. And one of the things we've done is capacity building for female champions on COVID-19 across 2 states, specifically Lagos and Oyo State. And so we train them to give them adequate information on COVID-19 so that they can go into the community level and as much as possible give people accurate and factual information on COVID-19 that will ensure that communities know what COVID-19 is all about and can actually take precautions, safe distancing, social distancing, and physical distancing to avoid infection. We have community-based relief efforts across 4 states, specifically 3 states, Oyo, Ogun, Lagos State, and FCT, where we have distributed relief materials, foods, hygiene materials to ensure that vulnerable populations are able to stay at home during the lockdown and have access to some basic nutritional support. We've conducted exercise and wellness sessions at the community level so that the role of exercise, which maximizes the an excellent performance of the immune system, is something people have in their subconscious. The fact that they need to take walks, they need to exercise, and maintain social and physical distance. We've established resource linkages for state governments in terms of linking them up to corporate organizations who want to provide PPE and also funds, and we also complement some of their systems. We're working currently on the Safe Communities and Schools project that we're putting together to ensure that by the time schools resume, we want those schools to be safe for our children. On this note, I want to say a very big thank you and wish you all the very best in our role to take responsibility against COVID-19. Thank you.
Thank you very much for excellent presentation. And I believe everyone has benefited from this one way or the other. Essentially, I'd just like to give us a brief overview of what Mrs. Akin-Jimoh has talked about. She has talked about women's nutrition, emphasis on breastfeeding during the first 6 months of life because it is very important, and for nursing mothers and babies, as well as for every other Nigerian and even globally, for everyone to keep safe and follow recommended safety precautions. She also spoke about nutritional care for the sick and malnourished children, essential hygiene actions including promotion of safe drinking water, washing of our hands, safe waste disposal, food storage, and open defecation, prevention and control of anemia among women and children, and prevention of and control of vitamin A deficiency through promotion of iodide salt. Thank you very much, Mrs. Akin-Jimoh, also for the tips that you gave up. We have a number of questions. I don't know, Dr. Aminu, do we have you back online? Dr. Aminu? Hello, Dr. Aminu?
Yes, I'm back. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that excellent presentation once again. I have some questions for you and Mrs. Akin-Jimoh. Let me thank you again for these excellent presentations and for co-hosting this webinar with Ovie Brume Foundation. So I'll go straight to the questions. The question is for you, Dr. Aminu. And somebody would like to know, does the virus really succumb to the immune system, or is it just, just run its full course like many viral illnesses and infections and infect individual recovery spontaneously? Or, of course, immune system plays a part, but is it during or after the infection? Somebody would like to know. Did you get my question?
Yes, I get it.
Okay. Okay, I will read 2 more questions and you can respond, and I will go back because we have quite a number of questions here. The second question, why have we not been able to herd immunity? I don't know if you understand what I'm talking about. Herd immunity.
Okay.
Okay, the third question, current evidence highlights that diet has a profound effect on people's immune system and disease susceptibility. But it's wrong to attribute, that's a comment, to attribute deaths due to COVID-19 to lack of adequate nutrition. Somebody would like to also know that. And why has it been? Sorry?
Okay, sir.
Please, can we mute our microphones? Joseph, please, can we mute microphones? Okay, the question, feeding is very important. How can the government palliative support be effectively distributed that it will reach the malnourished as well as extremely poor in such a way that corruption does not make a mess of the exercise, as this will boost nutrition, especially for children? So I'd like you to respond to those questions first, and then we go to other questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. If I actually got you right, let me answer those questions, especially the first one, where the person who asked wanted to know when nutrients and the viral infection, is it after or before the viral infection that those will be needed. And if you look at my presentation where I actually mentioned what happens, how the features of the immune system and how it responds to them. I say there are 3 levels of defense mechanism that they have. One is the barrier. Yes, nutrients play a very critical role at the point of entry. They are found in our skins and in our mucus, where they provide, because you need those nutrients to produce the enzymes that are required to play those roles, the digestive enzymes. So, and then the kind of some of the bacteria, but mainly the digestive enzymes. So before the infection, your immune system is ready. It's just like an attack. It's ready through your skin, through the mucus, as mentioned by my colleague. So those nutrients are there, and they have stimulated those antibodies that will need to be there, and then they've led into the production of them. But when that phase 2, if it still fails, the infection can take place if we are still exposed through the barriers. And when they get inside, then your natural immunity will take that general defense off and then create those neutrophils and macrophages that I mentioned, and needs to engulf and destroy the foreign invaders and the damaged cells. Remember that when the infection has taken place, it's not just staying there, but it's damaging cells, because it has to mutate, it has to create a kind of a fissures that it can suppress what you have. But your nutrients, those nutrients I've mentioned, are those ones that will be contributing to those damaged cells. So as at that point too, when you are having proliferation taking place, you are having more cells that will be produced to tackle the whole issue. So that's what happened, that even doing the nutrients plays that critical role, even for the infection and even during. So it's just like the issue of when all this phase 2, you have your vaccine. The vaccine will still have to work. Remember, the components of the nutrient components of protein that you require still require some of those micronutrients that will serve as either enzymes that will break down the protein to be able to carry oxygen around your blood to fight wherever they need to fight. So you need all those things combined together. Excuse me. The second one is, I attributed COVID-19 to lack, the death that we have, to lack of to nutrition. Yes, I didn't attribute it to that. I'm just saying theoretically that could take place when we begin to look at the socio-economic or socio-demographic characteristics of those who died. We don't know that yet. We don't know those who are infected. We don't have that yet. NCDC has not characterized that. What they have so far is they give us the age, they give us whether it's male and female. So it's until when we know that, we need to understand that, then we can then say whether they're, but we know quite well, when you look at all deaths, both things that are associated with all those deaths, malaria infection, even the one for diarrhea, for those things that they kill. Malnutrition is responsible. It's attributed to 50% of all these deaths in children, for instance. So even when you look at the cardiovascular diseases, they have found out that the diets of people are responsible for that. When you look at the burden of diseases in terms of all those cardiovascular diseases, diabetes and all the rest, you know, but diet, poor diet, which even in the field of medical practice, we don't consider poor diet. You hardly will say someone died as a result of poor diet. It's not said anywhere. Whereas when you look at those things that are responsible to death as a result of the burden of diseases, all those cardiovascular diseases, smoking, you know, attributive factor, you look at sex, you know, unprotected sex, you look at the issue of smoking, unprotected sex, and then infections as a result of other things, you find out that poor diet-related causes will attributed to almost double of all those things combined together. So that's why I mentioned that. But in the US or in other climes, they're already looking at all those things. You know, they are open to us. They give us the number that they're recording, and then who they are in terms of what they have and their kind of nutritional status. It's only here we don't have that yet. And that's why I'm calling on nutritionists, the nutrition community, the dietitians, to really be involved to collate all this information. And then how do we organize palliatives? Very interesting. Yes, we have a guide where where you look at the food expenditure basket. There's a kind of a basket that shows what type of food to go into that palliative care you are providing. You know, it's not enough to just provide something because we think it's emergency. Yes, it's emergency, but at the same time, people are staying in their homes. They have everything to cook the food. So when you are providing that, you have to take into consideration all these nutrients. One thing that the CACOVID, and I'm trying to push in the CACOVID, is to have an arrangement where you have integration of all the testing. You know, remember, people are not coming off for testing. Then even getting the communities to be involved with social distancing, practicing it, teaching them on all those instructions we are talking about that are in the guidelines. Then we can really bring people together and organize. You see, if we organize the people, and again, more so, if we know who we want to target. But again, when it comes to COVID-19, my own experience is that everybody needs service. Everybody needs the palliative. It's not just saying some are more vulnerable, but you can't find it. Everybody is vulnerable. So if we don't organize it around that, then we always cause a kind of confusion. And the challenge we are faced with is that most often we have people, we have different benefactors who are going there at different times with small bits of materials they have. We need a kind of a coordinated effort whereby whatever you have is handed over to an agency that people will look onto, that will be responsible for that. And then they can map out the community or the countries as per where they go today, where they go tomorrow, and then be able to do that. Rather than individuals, what I have seen so far is that individuals are going to the communities at different times to hand over these things. And they are not enough to go around. That's why it seems as if people have to rush for that. And then they throw the issue of social distancing and covering their mouth into the wind. And then it's not being respected. I don't know whether I've answered all.
Yes, Dr. Aminu, that has been insightful. Thank you very much. I'd like to go to Mrs. Akin-Jimoh now to respond to some questions, and then I will come back to you, Dr. Aminu. Mrs. Akin-Jimoh, are you here with us? Mrs. Akin-Jimoh?
I'm here.
Okay, thank you very much. I have some questions for you, and I would like you to respond to them. The first one is, in the UK, about 60% of the frontline workers who died from coronavirus are from Black, Asians, and minority ethnic groups. Could it be linked to the poor sunlight and therefore need for vitamin D supplementation, which affects our immune system, immune response to infections as we experienced during the recent COVID-19 in the UK? That's the first one. The second one, our audience would like you to give more examples of fruits and food that they can eat at this period. Essentially, they would like to know what are the nutritional needs for under 5 in terms of calorie, micronutrients, and micro and micronutrients. Yes, macro and micronutrients. The third question, in light of home nutrition and hygiene, how do we handle fruits bought from supermarkets and abokis, that's banana, apples, pineapple, before eating them? And one more question, but we still have more. The level of exclusive breastfeeding is very low now, especially among illiterates, both in urban and grassroots. COVID-19 cannot be transferred through breast milk. What can your organization do to create more awareness on exclusive breastfeeding in order to stop the spreading of COVID-19? Thank you. We'll take those 4 questions and then we'll come back to you later.
Okay, on the first one is the one around vitamin D supplementation. Now, one of the key things that we've seen is that there are a lot of supplements out there, calcium supplements that don't have vitamin D attached. It's important at this stage to, if for frontline workers in particular, if you see, when I was going through my presentation on superfoods that they're supposed to take, to key things I mentioned is sardines and mackerels, based on the fact that they have vitamin D in them. Because vitamin D has a very, very important role to play in immune function. So it's key for frontline workers to use supplements and also consume foods that are rich in vitamin D. But then when you say categorically that a certain group of frontline workers are dying more as a result of COVID-19, there are several factors that could be to play. We need to look at, for example, are there underlying health issues? What kind of environment? Because we do know, from different studies that when you talk about Asian and Blacks, they usually live in more crowded environments, and so that will make them also susceptible more to infections. So there are several factors. So I've not seen any research, that says categorically that, when we compare frontline workers that are from this particular group and this particular group, these ones are dying more, and this could be the reasons why. So we need to be cautious about, making generalized statements that are not necessarily backed with research findings. But one thing I'll say categorically, as a frontline worker, honestly speaking, you need to take care of your health. You need to look at what you eat. You need to take more supplements to ensure that your immune system is functioning at optimal capacity. Now, you also talked about the issue of breastfeeding, that people are not necessarily, the question was on breastfeeding, that people are not breastfeeding as much as they should. What is the organization doing? One of the key messages, like I said, we did train some young female champions on COVID-19 and creating awareness at the community level. One of the things is that COVID-19 is something that we're learning. It's like a learn as you go thing. And so the issue around breastfeeding not being a risk factor for infants who have been breastfed to get COVID-19 infection, unlike probably HIV, it's a recent discovery and we're learning. But even apart from that, the issue of breastfeeding for 6 months is something that is very important, that determines not only the nutritional status of the infant, but also even intellectual capacity somewhere down the line. So our organization is focused on, as much as possible, getting accurate information out there. And in terms of, I'm even talking about adolescent nutrition. And so this is something we'll continue to get out there so that people know that breastfeeding, it's important whether a mother has COVID-19 or not. The child is meant to be breastfed for 6 months exclusively before you start introducing infant feeding, other infant complementary feeding. Mrs. Awogbemi, I don't know if I've covered all the questions. Are there some I've not covered?
Yeah,
you were breaking at some point.
Oh, okay. Yes. Some people would like to know about macronutrients and micronutrients, and they want you to give them some examples of food and fruits that they can eat at this period. And some other persons also asked about food, fruits that you buy from the supermarket and from abokis. How do you treat them before eating? Like bananas, apples, pineapples. Yes.
Okay. The first thing I'll talk about is when I was talking about foods in particular, I want to focus on the superfoods, fruits that you're supposed to be eating at this time. I did mention that citrus fruits are very, very important because, and I'm talking specifically about oranges, grapefruits, lemons, very important. Even lime, they're very important because they contain asparagine, which inhibits the successful virus division. I mentioned citrus, oranges, and grapes is very important. Dark grapes and berries are very, very important. Berries, even though we don't have a lot of berries in Nigeria specifically, but if you're outside the country, you can have access to all manner of berries, strawberries, elderberries, and dark grapes. And these are very rich in polycyanidins and lectins. And what they do is to block the attachment of the virus to the lungs. I did also mention green peppers, broccoli, carrots, mint, and rosemary. And I want to link it to the fact that I know a lot of young children don't like broccoli, but one of the things I always tell mothers is the fact that is what you teach the child as the child is growing up, that the child will learn to eat and learn to like. And so if you bring up your child with sweetened things, definitely the child is not going to grow up into an adult that would like things like salads and broccoli. But when you're training your child, you train your child in healthy eating, which is one of the things I also emphasize on the fact that household at this time, in terms of what we teach the children, what they eat, is very, very important. So teaching a child healthy eating by introducing broccoli early, carrots, green peppers, making it, you can make omelets, Spanish omelets, cut peppers inside, and let them learn to eat their eggs with vegetables. All these are very important. Let them learn to take their rice with vegetables. All these are very, very critical. And I've talked about citrus is very important. Now, guava contains a lot of vitamin C. If you look at the first, my first slide, it had pictures of guava, it had pictures of what you call star apple, which is agbalumo in Yoruba. And if you go back to that particular slide, so I mean, it's all, and I did have so many slides that were showing different vegetables, cucumber, oranges, even cabbage. These are things that are readily available that you can use, to spice up your carbohydrate meals and make them, nutrient dense. Another thing is, when you have, one of the things we teach early also to children is, if you have a plate of food, learn that 50% of that plate is supposed to be vegetables. So it's not a case of 50% being carbohydrates, it's a case of 50% being vegetables. And when we say vegetables, we mean things. So if, for example, you're serving a swallow food, which is what we call the likes of pounded yam, amala, fufu and all that in Nigeria. I mean, if you have a plate, 50% of it should be vegetables that is going with the swallow. 50% of that plate is not supposed to be the carbohydrate. So the remaining 50%, you now divide into your carbohydrate and your protein. And so if you teach your children very early that this is the right way to eat, then they grow up with that as part of life. So, and then I had another question that talked about how do you clean things that you buy from Aboki and from the supermarket. There have been several conversations around this. Now, the first thing is, if you want to buy vegetables, it's better not to take the one in front, first and foremost, because most people, when they want to buy, they pick, they put back, they pick, they put back. You want to stretch out and reach out to the one at the back and just pick it and put it in your shopping bag. One of the things, so for example, you want to buy carrots, don't buy the ones in front, you can pick the one that is a bit at the back, so that in case somebody has picked and then put back. So what I do practically is, when I buy my vegetables, I usually buy them early in the morning for several reasons. I believe, most times there are not many people buying vegetables in the morning. By the time it's afternoon, evening, several people have come, they've touched the vegetables and all that. So I buy early in the morning. And when I bring it back home, I keep it in the sun, for like 3-4 hours. After keeping it in the sun for like 3-4 hours, then I bring it in, I wash it in salt and water. Salt and water. For those ones that I can quickly put soap on my hand and rub, like oranges, for example, like mangoes, for example, I spend time to wash them, keep them out on a clean surface and let it dry. Most times I don't put it in the fridge because I believe things should be consumed at normal room temperature. So if I'm keeping anything in the fridge at all, it's maybe because it might spoil. But otherwise, if it's not going to spoil outside and I'm going to eat it within a short period of time, then I'll leave it outside and just consume. So please, as much as possible, when you buy things, don't pick and drop. Pick what you need, put it in your basket, bring it home, keep it outside for a while. If you're able to keep it in the sun, excellent. If you're not, if you're bringing it into the home at all, please, your hand as you come in, wash with salt water. If there are things you can wash with by rubbing your hands with soap, like fruits, for example, you can do that a bit. Some people are not comfortable with it, but I would rather, I'm very sure what I'm eating is, very, very clean, and I've taken the necessary precautions to ensure that I've cleaned it. And it's not just even about COVID-19, it's about ensuring that, we know a lot of people we buy things for, they touch their faces, they touch their nose, they do all manner of things. Maybe they just don't use the toilet, their bag, they don't wash their hands, things like. So it's not just even about COVID-19 alone. It's about you ensuring that whatever it is you're eating, clean and absolutely clean and free of vermin and bacteria before you take it inside.
Thank you, Mrs. Akin-Jimoh. Dr. Aminu, can I have your attention for another 5 minutes before we go back to Mrs. Akin-Jimoh and then we'll round up the webinar? Dr. Francis, Dr. Aminu?
Yeah, I'm listening. So you can have it.
Okay, all right, thank you, sir. So I have these questions here for you. Since we are trying, I'm trying to put on my video, okay. Since we're trying to tackle malnutrition in COVID-19 diseased patients, how can registered dietitian and nutritionists gain more strength in gaining recognition in patient management from the community at the hospital level? Second, how is your foundation monitoring and evaluating your interventions? What plans are you implementing to scale up the national strategy? One is, some of the listed nutrient sources in Dr. Aminu's lecture are in raw forms and may require some forms of processing, such as steaming, frying, cooking, etc., before being consumed. I would like to know if processing could impact on the available nutrient content in these various foods. And if yes, what ideal processing methods would you recommend in order to derive optimal nutrients content from these foods? That's it for you, Dr. Aminu.
Yeah,
I would like you to take 5 minutes, please. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Yeah. Just to quickly say, the dietitians are very, very important. And I think those are the things we need to actually push for through advocacy to get NCDC, who is actually overseeing the whole, who has mandate for the incident management of COVID-19 in Nigeria. And that's where we talk of multi-sectoral, because they are very, very important in that regard. Because we have to manage, even at those isolation centers, some cases of those who are at risk. There are two categories of people. There are some category of those who are at risk, and then we have those who are patients who are in the ICU, because that's why those are the ones eventually we seen that they pass on. So there's a framework. I didn't find that for you, but dietitians need to look at that and be involved, even in checking for malnutrition, checking for all those things, which I believe is taking place in those centers, but they need to be there. And then we need to push for nutritionists and dietitians to be part of it. Then the issue of how do we monitor our programs generally? We have what we call monitoring and evaluation, accountability and learning, like MEAL as an acronym, where it's like all-rounder. From the beginning of your planning of that program, we have of the program, we have the monitoring, that where you determine the indicators you are going to really measure your key metrics, at the end of the day. How do you actually, just like this COVID-19, even though it's an emergency, we're still able to bring out some key metrics. Key metrics in the terms of how do we reduce, how do we save lives? How do we reduce lives? So we set those things up at the beginning as part of our design, and then we monitor these, and then we learn from that. What we do in our program, overall programming, is that as we move on, we learn and then use that to hold ourselves accountable and hold even those who are participating accountable as well. So hence the issue of MEAL in place. Then the impact of processing. Yes, I mentioned there are some of them that you need to eat raw, but there are so many of our foods here down in this part of the world that you need to process. And for instance, vegetables, they have a kind of a range, which my colleagues actually mentioned on how you process all these. At times we kill to finish. We kill all the micronutrients most often when we overcook whatever we do. And again, if you want to really, we have to refrain from frying. frying is already giving it, increasing what we call those free fatty acids that are there in. So you have to remove that extent for some of those foods. For some of foods, you eat them cooked. And when they are cooked, like I said, like orange flesh sweet potato or sweet potato, you just cook everything together before you peel. You know, you will have preserved some of those micronutrients that may be at the coat of that food, the skin of the potato. You know, you will have actually preserved them before you consume them. So yes, definitely some of them have to be eaten raw because they are okay, but majority of them will have to cook along with what we do. But refrain from actually frying, deep frying especially, to be able to benefit some of those, because cooking and frying and other processing techniques can lead to either decreasing the micronutrients that I mentioned earlier on. Over.
Thank you very much. Hello, Mr. Akin-Jimoh. Okay, we would like to go on to general questions. I mean, yeah, I'd like Mr. Akin-Jimoh to go first. This is for both of you, Mrs. Akin-Jimoh and Dr. Aminu. And then after this, we will round up this webinar. Nutrition seems all-encompassing, but this information being presented is known to a few of us. Even government is more about palliatives against COVID-19, with little information in the public space on nutrition, exercise, psychological and other implications. How can we have an holistic response as a nation? And the second one, specifically for children, there are regional variations in the nutritional needs in Nigeria. How has the scourge of the Almajiri in the north affected the main goal of, I mean, governments trying to treat COVID-19 in their environment? So when you respond, I'd also like you to give a final contributions so that we can round up. Thank you, Mrs. Akin-Jimoh.
Okay, thank you, Adeola. Just to add to, I wanted to jump in towards the end of Dr. Aminu's response on issue of handling vegetables. I just want to say before I answer that, before you cut vegetables, it's important to wash. Because a lot of us cut up vegetables and we wash and we end up leaching a lot of vitamins into the water. I just want to reiterate that. And now on the question you asked specifically that there are a lot of variations across regions. Absolutely. One of the things we know about the Almajiri phenomenon is the fact that a lot of them are malnourished. And as mentioned by Dr. Aminu in his presentation, if the group goes down with COVID-19, definitely we might end up losing a lot of them, which is one of the reasons why it's important to target them at this point in time with nutritional interventions across the board. The federal government, unfortunately, their mandates are being moved, from some parts of the northern Nigeria to another part where they are supposed to have come from. Even during that transition, a lot of them will be acquiring the infection because of the exposure. And so it's important. There's no single organization that can do this alone. The government has to take a proactive role on this, because we feel from a child protection point of view, the fact that you're moving young boys from a particular place to another place, thereby exposing them to infection and also exposing them to several other issues around you, in itself is wrong, and so we need to take charge of such situations, of not even moving them, but rather providing palliative and more constructive and more sustainable solution to ensuring that their nutritional needs are well taken care of, their child protection needs are well taken care of, and child protection is so broad. I mean, it includes shelter, it includes nutrition, it includes safety. So looking at the Almajiri phenomenon from a child protection angle would ensure that needs are addressed, and the government has a very, very active role to play. Civil society organizations also have a very, very active role to play. And there are key organizations that are working on this. We can say, that probably their efforts are not enough, because even before we had this training session, I still got a comprehensive, social media posting on what is going on in a situation where they want to feed over 200 or about 300 almanjiris. And there was really no social distancing, no physical distancing. So this is a huge concern, and we can only but try our best to see that, their own, because they are children, we need to look at it from several angles, but adopting a child protection network angle will go a long way in us understanding. And we have also a UN organization that is charged, with this issue of taking care of children. And I know even though they are probably doing quite a lot, but the problem is so huge, it's so big, and so all hands have to be on deck. And I know that Mr. Akin-Jimoh also has one or two comments on this. Probably he might be able to drop it in before we do. Now, in terms of my last words on building immunity or nutrition at the household level, I think we've said a lot. A lot of responsibility lies with us as adults. Now, a lot of responsibilities lies with women in particular, because most times, let's take it, and give ourselves the knock on the head. We determine what the family eats. And so laying the right foundation for your child and for your family in terms of giving them the right things to eat. Let's start them early on vegetables. We're in control of the kitchen. We know what type of oil we're supposed to use to cook. We know we're not supposed to fry. We know we're not supposed to do quick meals. All these are things that we have within our power. This is the time to know that nutrition is no longer negotiable. It's not a case of quick fix here. It's a case of making sure your family eats nutritious, well-prepared meals, and they eat based on the requirements for their age. And children are not supposed to be given sugary things because they are crying, biscuits, sweets, and all that. Children are not supposed to eat these frosted, sugared cereals. All these are things we know. But because we want to keep our children calm or whatever, we're just setting them up for a life of God knows what. COVID-19 or no COVID-19. What we're saying is, whatever you feed your child now, my colleague said it, you are what you eat. And it starts right from breastfeeding to infancy, to adolescence, to adulthood, right on to the elderly. So lay a good foundation. And the ball stops a lot with women. Men too are here, they're listening. And so they too need to encourage, women that are in their lives, their sisters, their wives, their aunties, their mothers, and so on and so forth, to please, this is the time to get the nutrition right from the background. So we need to take charge and do something now. And it's not a situation of we see something that is wrong and is being done because it's not your household, because it's not your child, you turn. No, that's not the situation. Correct and know that you've said it. This is how this thing is meant to be done. And so we need to take charge as women, we need to take charge as guys, we need to take charge as brothers, as sisters. Let's take charge of the situation. Let's know that nutrition is no longer negotiable. We need to get it right. And we need to get it right.
Mr. Akin-Jimoh. Thank you very much. Dr. Aminu, your last words, please.
Yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity. But let me just reiterate here what I said earlier on, that the immune system, like I said, is one of the most complex bodily systems, and I've shown that. And it's made up of a network of cells that I mentioned, even molecules and tissues from biological point of view. And it has evolved a range of different functions that enable them to deal with the diverse pathogens that is present in the environment, especially for this COVID-19. This complexity means that, as well as our nutritional status, because I want to reiterate that, there are a huge range of other factors. So don't let us just say you eat nutrient, and then when you do that and you are stressed, like the almanjiris, like my colleague rightly said, they are stressed already. When you bring them from another point of view to the other, even if you watch from the television, those who relate either their ordeals or their experiences, they will tell you how stressful it was to even get to the isolation center, how they attended to them. So if one is stressed, it will have affected your immune system entirely. So it's not just nutrient alone, as I said, even time of the day, age, obesity, and other cardiovascular that I've mentioned earlier on. So we need to consider all these as our package and in the integrated form of services that we are providing. And like we're doing in the nutrition community, we have what we call food and nutrition policy, and we have plan of actions derived from that. We have various sectors have their critical roles to play in ensuring that the food system is ensured and food security is actually ensured as well. You know, while we have those other health services interventions that need to go together. That's what makes nutrition. Nutrition basically means you have the food security ensured, you have care guaranteed in terms of social protection, and that of the health, both hygiene and environmental health, and immunization services and all the rest combined. So recently, the nutrition community has come as they've responded to what federal government should be doing, the PTF. And I think in few days to come, we will see their response being addressed as well with the PTF. It's not going to be only the incident management, but we manage other issues that are associated with that. That's the only way that we can guarantee the immune system being built in our societies, and then you know that we do. All hands must be on deck, and all must actually play their role. If you play your role as an agricultural expert, then you will contribute to improve nutrition. If you play your role as a wash specialist, you contribute to improve nutrition. If you play your role as an educationist, you improve nutrition in the longer run. And if you communicate good nutrition as part of those other issues that you communicate as well. Thank you so much for this opportunity and for all of you to respond. So to participating in this, let's continue to discuss it. Nutrition can never, it's a life, it's our environment, it's all in all that we have. And so we have to continue to embrace it and take it into whatever we do and at any level. That's the only way we can improve nutrition. Thank you so much. God bless you all.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Aminu. I've had a good time listening to you today. We have a few hands up, but unfortunately we can't take everyone and we can't take all the questions because our time is fast spent. But I'd like to have Mr. Akin-Jimoh right now. If you are here, Mr. Akin-Jimoh. Mr. Akin-Jimoh. Mr. Akin-Jimoh, are you here? His microphone is okay. Mr. Akin-Jimoh.
Hello,
yes,
can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, good
yes,
evening, everyone. Yeah, my concern, good evening, everyone. My concern is nutrition is very important for virtually every aspect of our life. But a lot of the time, looking at what is going on at the moment, this is coming like a latter day preaching. And these are things that we need to prioritize. I've gained a lot, and I'm lucky that all the things being presented are things that I personally imbibed in. A lot of issues that has to do with, the psychological component of responding to COVID-19, the psychiatric issues that has to do with exercises, and so on and so forth. Most of these things are things that we need to look at as a personal issue. We should not look at government doing everything, because government will not come to our homes to prepare our meals. We prepare our meals ourselves. Government can just provide the information and so on and so forth. I know that there are challenges virtually for everyone, in the way we do our things, the food we eat. If you have daily income and so on and so forth, life is impacted, but we have to look at issues, beyond all the things that are happening to us now. Dr. Aminu, thank you for the information about the nutrition response, which governments, will start looking at, which I believe Nutrition Society of Nigeria will probably be active in also, in a way that we need to get the information out information is in the hands of 90% of us who don't need it. Most of us who are here, let's pass the information out. Beyond fake news, there are a lot of fake news all over the place. And fake news sells more to a large extent, but we need to find a way to really bring out this cogent report beyond those of us who are here. And those of us who are journalists here, perhaps we need to do more. And those are some of the things that we have to look at that this is affecting our life. Before we get to Abuja, it has affected us in our homes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jimoh. Like I said earlier, we will not be able to take any more questions or contributions because I believe that our speakers have really dealt with the issue of immunity and nutrition, our health. So, I mean, we all need to, go back and see what we can do ourselves. How can we improve our own nutrition, our own immunity? How can we contribute to, to flattening the COVID-19 curve? So thank you very much for coming. Please do not forget to drop your name and email. We will send you a feedback from this presentation. But before we go, I'd just like to say a few words about Ovie Brume Foundation. That's where I work. I'm the chief servant there. And essentially, we work with young people in public schools, and our projects cut across health, education, and livelihoods. So essentially, we try to build the capacities of young people. And even this COVID-19 phase, we have been empowering young people in our community where we serve, and we will continue to do our bit. Thank you very much, Dr. Aminu. I'd like to say a special thank you to Aliko Dangote Foundation for co-hosting with us. I'd also like to say a big thank you to Youth Empowerment Foundation. Thank you very much for accepting to do this. It's been a very big privilege. Mr. Akin-Jimoh, thank you for supporting Mrs. Akin-Jimoh. God bless you. God bless everyone for coming today. We hope to see you for our next webinar. We will let you know. Please do not forget to drop your name and email. God bless you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Yeah, all right. Thanks.